Hey, what's up? Sean here. After the Toronto Raptors beat the Washington Wizards 109-100 in Washington to move to 4-0 on the road this season and pick up their fifth straight win, the first time they've done that since the title defense season back in 2019-20. We will talk all about that with a wonderful guest on today's show, the queen of Raptors TikTok game recaps. It is Ashley Docking here to break it all down. Going to be a lot of Fred VanVleet talk. We're going to talk about Dalano Banton as well, and a few other things as we dig into a really fun one down in DC coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1050 of Locked On Raptors for Thursday, November the 4th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors, and you can subscribe to, follow, tell a friend, review, rate, all that stuff, the podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms for free. And you can subscribe on YouTube, which we love you for doing. It's a very nice thing for you to do. Helps us out, helps with algorithms and all that good stuff. So thanks in advance. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day. On today's show, we are talking about the Raptors' fifth straight win over the Washington Wizards down in DC to close out a 3-0 road trip as they come back home to play the Cavs on Friday. And it was a fun one, 109-100 for the Raptors. Fred VanVleet had a big game. We're going to talk about that. We're bringing back the dude of the game, the new segment I've introduced to the podcast, and we'll talk about some other fun things that went down in this one with today's guests. And I'm very happy to have Ashley Docking back on the show, as mentioned off the top, the queen of Raptors TikTok recaps. And you're doing a million other things all around the world there, Ashley. NBA Twitch streams, lacrosse podcasts. You're killing it. Ashley, how's it going?
Busy, as you mentioned. But did you say it was 1050, the episode that you've done? 1050?
Yeah, it's a lot of episodes. Yeah.
That in itself, like, forget about me. That in itself is amazing. What a feat of perseverance. Good for you.
Really a good feat of career stagnation. Just, I found the spot. I'm going to stay here forever. You'll never move me. Inertia is a powerful force. I love it. It's wonderful. And this got to be like your third or fourth appearance on the show, Ashley. It's lovely having you back. And we have a really fun game to talk about here. Again, 109-100, the Raptors beating the Wizards. Fred VanVleet is probably the place we're going to have to start, but we will talk about some of the other good stuff that went down in this game, from some smart coaching moves by Nick Nurse. We'll talk about, I think, probably the center conversation once again, as Khem Birch was quite good. Precious Achiuwa was quite not, outside of one very, very good dunk that might earn him playing time for the next 3 months just on the strength of that dunk alone. But Ashley, let's start with Fred VanVleet, shall we? He, I think, was the takeaway from this game. 33 points, 6 assists, 13 of 22 from the field, hit 10 twos in this game, which is a decidedly un-Fred VanVleet stat. What were your impressions of Fred VanVleet's game as he really had his finger on the pulse from start to finish?
Yeah, he was really married to that jumper at the corner of the key, but why not? It was working so efficiently, and the Wizards refused to send anybody to come over the screen to deny him, and they had Gafford a lot of times dropping back in the paint, so of course he's going to take it. Fred VanVleet, to me, is the epitome of a leader, and I think that this has been just talked about to death, of course, but I think that this is going to give him a new opportunity to even grow even further the role that he has now that Kyle's gone. And we saw maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say uncertainty, because I don't think there's anything about him that's uncertain when it comes to basketball in particular. I don't want to speak to his whole life there, but
I guess I'll bet on myself.
Yeah,
maybe,
for sure.
Thinking
Always
about it, maybe I'll hedge.
Yeah. So you know what? The most successful people do hedge once in a while. But yeah, I think that now he's really found a rhythm. I think that one of the best things that good leaders do is they really take the temperature of the people around them and gauge what they're capable of, and not necessarily on a grand scale, night in and night out. Hey, where's this guy at tonight? Where's this guy at tonight? So how do I need to adapt and adjust to help my team be successful based on their successes, or in some cases, their inefficiencies? And Fred does that really well. And I think we saw that tonight.
Yeah, it was decidedly, I hate always feeling like I have to do the Lowry Fred VanVleet comparison, but it was a Kyle Lowry-ass game from Fred VanVleet in this one. Like just kind of knowing at all times exactly what the Raptors needed. There were 3 parts of this game in particular where I thought like he alone kept the Raptors in the driver's seat. There was one moment that took place in the late third quarter. The Wizards have got a bit of a run. I think they pulled it to within 5. It was 76-71. And it was a bit of a sort of, it seemed like a bit of a moment where, okay, this could go wrong if things don't go a certain way for the Raptors here. But he comes out of a timeout, hits a pull-up 3 right away, puts them up by 3. And it was great. It just kind of steadied the ship. It got the Raptors right back in where they needed to be. Got them, to the end of that quarter. They played the end of that quarter with like a bizarro lineup of like Fred and Champagny, Banton, Boucher, and Precious or something like that. It was super weird, super awkward, but it
horrible
survived.
For you to say.
Yeah. Yeah, there's too many tongue twisters on this team, too many B's, all of that. But that was, I thought, one moment there. Another moment where I really thought Fred kind of showed just how great he is Fred, actually, Jack Armstrong pointed this out really well in the broadcast. He noted how they, as you mentioned, they started sending 2 to the ball when in the pick and roll with Precious Achiuwa. Instantly, Nick Nurse goes to Kem Birch after they start showing that coverage. And then Jack called it. He's like, watch, Fred's going to find Kem Birch here on the short roll. And 3 straight times, twice for a Kem Birch floater, and then a third time, Birch got it in the middle of the floor and found OG for a 3. All because Fred made plays out of those doubles, wasn't forcing anything, didn't feel like he had to keep putting shots up. It was like, all right, they're giving me this now, and we're going to go through Kem Birch now. And that was beautiful. And then lastly was down the stretch of the game, things are getting a little bit hairy. I think it's a 6-point game at this point, 103-97. And Fred picks up a rebound off of a really terrible Bradley Beal 3, like a truly baffling decision for him to shoot that early in the clock with like OG draped all over him. Fred grabs the rebound, goes the whole way, throws his head fake that like got me to move in my couch in Hamilton, flinching? Ontario. Yeah. And he just sort of parts the sea for himself and finishes there to put them up 8. Kind of all she wrote at that point. Just a really like masterful, every single thing the Raptors needed. Fred VanVleet was providing a type of game from him. We should probably talk about the mid-ranger, Ashley, a little bit more in depth, because like that is a new tool that he's added. Yeah. And we talked about it earlier this week, actually, on Wednesday's podcast with James Herbert about how he's shooting that shot with like crazy efficiency right now, like well north of 50%, 67%, I believe he was at between 16 feet and the 3-point arc, which obviously is unsustainable, but still bloody impressive. And I don't think he did anything to hurt those numbers tonight. But like, what do you think that shot in particular means for VanVleet, who's always been this guy who's kind of just maybe needed a little bit more juice in the half court to kind of keep things flowing? Maybe that's what gives it to him.
Well, first of all, I think DeMar DeRozan somewhere being like, what the hell? All of a sudden, we're good with mid-range. I have some questions that need to be answered. I would like an audience with the people that are in charge. That's what I think, first of all. And it's just interesting, the dynamic of what we applaud versus what we don't. I think obviously the difference with DeMar DeRozan is that he maybe didn't have the 3 in his bag, so there wasn't the option to expand the game, and so maybe that's why we allow it for things like Fred VanVleet. We're like, oh, this is the smart play right now, even though you can do other things. But I think that's it. It just makes you more versatile. It makes the defense have to play you honest at all points in time. Because if they know you don't have a mid-range, or it's not something that you have a tendency to pull up in, well, then they can sag off you a little bit more, as we saw with Fred VanVleet, wait for you in the paint and then block the shit out of you, like we've seen with Fred VanVleet on a number of occasions, because they have that size on you, so they can make up for a lot of different things. But now if you're coming around the corner on a screen, stopping on a dime because you're reading the defense, they have to come up. It allows you to dish a pass, like you said, to Kem. It allows someone to run the baseline and maybe you dump it off there on the side instead. Or it allows you to find somebody in the corner, because even just stopping in and around the nail, it gives you at least 270 view of the court and can allow you to pick things apart, because oftentimes on a pick and roll, which they run a lot, obviously from the point, there's going to be someone out of position and someone smart like Fred VanVleet, even someone who's a little wily like Malachi Flynn or something like that. They'll be able to find people if they get to that point in the floor, and it really opens it up. It exploits the defense.
Yeah, it's just another thing to make it that much more difficult for the defense to figure Fred out. We know he's got the pull-up three, and that's going to sometimes
Mhm.
entice the double teams. He's shown he can pass out of those, even though he's 6 feet tall. He can kind of just like squeeze it through two dudes. And, Kem Birch, I think, is a really nice sort of receiver of those passes. And honestly, it's kind of why
Oh,
Scotty
yeah.
Barnes is like a dream potential pick and roll partner with him as well. A, with
Yeah.
his size as a target, and B, with his passing ability from the middle of the floor. And then, if teams are going to drop against Fred, which is a weird call considering he's got that pull-up game, he
Yeah,
can
I found
walk
that
right into
super
that 18-foot
disrespectful
range. Yeah.
because he's tactical too with his shot, right? Like, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but
No,
it's
no.
like he makes the shots, as you said. It's like he's very timely in the way that he's doing things. Even if you want to go back as far as the championship year, it's like he was so bad for so long, and then against the Warriors, all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, you guys need me now? Like, actually, okay, cool. Like, I'll dial back in." And there were opportunities for him to really just show out. But even like when they went the 5-point run, the little mini run, Fred goes, he makes a layup in transition, I believe. And then Banton tips the ball and then finds him. Who found him? Did Banton find him, or Precious found him at the top and he shot the three?
Yeah.
Anyway, they got 5 points.
Precious did, after Banton got
And so even that, it's like, that is a killer. That series is a killer. If he doesn't make that shot, then it's no problem. It's like you're not capitalizing on errors. You're not punching people or kicking them when they're down, which we don't promote, generally speaking, but in basketball, for sure.
Yeah, it was a really, really incredible Fred VanVleet game, and just kind of extends a run of a really excellent play from him overall. Ashley, we're going to continue diving in here to a couple more items we're going to talk about, just kind of rapid fire through some dudes and some interesting storylines from this game as well. I want to talk about OG Anunoby, who had some really impressive flourishes in this game. I want to talk about the Precious Achiuwa Cam Birch stuff. I also want to give some love to Svi Mykhailiuk, because I don't think we're going to get to him in the dude of the game, because you have selected the dude of the game here that we'll get to in the final segment of the show. But we will get to some rapid fire notes from this game in just 1 second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at rockauto.com, who are wonderful, especially if you're someone like me who knows nothing about cars whatsoever. And when you walk into the mechanic, I look like a sizzling piece of bacon to a mechanic. Like, this guy knows nothing. I'm going to fleece this guy for all he's worth. And you know what? They're right to, because I don't know what I'm doing. But instead, I have started doing something else. I go to Rock Auto in control, because I will pick the parts I want them to put in my car. I still don't know how to put them in my car. Sometimes I'll go to my father-in-law or something like that, but I'll usually just go to the mechanic and say, "Hey, I have this thing now. Please put it on my car for me." And they will do it, and they're not charging me for that part the full freight. For example, if you go to a chain store or a mechanic or whatever it might be, for example, just to use one part as a bit of a way to tell the story here. The Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $350 at a chain store. You can get it for $216 at rockauto.com. And the best part about rockauto.com is there's not just one Honda Odyssey fuel pump there. They have all sorts of different makes, models, specifications, and everything you might want, and various prices you can choose from as well. So you are totally in control. Thanks to the wonderful people at rockauto.com, who are a family business who have been serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go explore their easy-to-use website. If I can use it, you can use it. It's very intuitive, very quick to find the parts you need. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their "How'd you hear about us" box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you will ever need at rockauto.com. And today's show is brought to you by our pals over at betonline.ag as well. They are back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the basketball season, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. You might want to be putting some money down to your Toronto Raptors to do some stuff in the postseason. Maybe you want to put something on the win over under. You might be a little bit late to get those good odds, though, because they're good now and they don't seem to be turning back. So if you're late, if you want to sort of make up for the lateness of betting on the Raptors, you can go bet on some other stuff. You can bet on some player props. You can bet on games each night if you want as well. You can head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit, meaning if you put in $100, you get $150 in your account just to play with. That's a wonderful thing. You should just go and sign that up just for that deal alone. From basketball, football, baseball, the postseason, I guess baseball postseason's over, but either way, you can bet on futures for baseball now as well. Will there be a lockout? Yes or no? Put some money down, baby. You got the NHL, boxing, UFC, all the way down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all of the available offers right now that are on tap for the 2021 season. It's an awesome time to go and bet on some sports. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Ashley, let's continue on. Thank you to you for the listeners for making this your first listen of the day, of course. Ashley, let's talk just some rapid fire things about this game. OG Anunoby, we should probably talk about him. Not quite the 36-point out-of-body experience we saw against the Knicks on Monday, but pretty damn good nonetheless. The first half in particular, some really, really excellent examples of him sort of maturing as a number one, 1A, 1B type option. You only had one assist in this game. That's got to be one of the most deceiving one assist games I've ever seen, because the number of sick passes he made in traffic, stopping on a dime, realizing he had defensive attention on him, finding the open guy, flashing to the paint, whatever it might have been. Really impressive stuff from OG overall to go along with his 21 points. What were your impressions of OG's performance against the Wizards tonight?
Oh, let's get his secondary assist numbers first of all, because I need to know. That's what we're actually interested in, where that tells the real story. How involved were you in leading up to scoring? Because really, that's where the unsung hero is. Here's the thing I love about OG. Everyone's going to make a ton of noise about him expanding his game. Of course, that makes a ton of sense. He decided that he wanted to commit to becoming a better player, and it's showing immediately. So his ceiling is so high. But two things: his floor is never going to be that low because his defense is always going to be so good, and he's going to draw a ton of attention, and he's going to be able to lock up a number of people, whether it's a main ball handler, whether it's a big and it's a mismatch, he's slightly undersized but still strong enough to do so, or even if it's coming over and help defense and making a play, making a block. But speaking of blocks, he feels like the kind of guy who will never be too big to still play all out and be afraid of looking dumb, if that makes sense. He's always going to contest you. He's always going to run out, which we saw, run out to the corner to block a three-point shot, falling into the stands, maybe getting a little hot mustard on his shoulder so the play can continue without him. But you cannot overstate how important that is, because there are a lot of players who start to get a little bit more attention, who start to change their role in the hierarchy of the team, get a little more play, get a little more run, and they don't necessarily do those things anymore. They don't have that kind of gusto when approaching the blue collar tasks, if you will. And so those are two things that I really like about him so far, is that he's put in the work and he's never going to be, hopefully, too big to do all the stuff that made him special in the first place while he was still just a raw talent.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's been super impressive about OG's season so far, is his usage is way up. He's about 25% usage on a season, but his defense has not tailed off at all. And you could argue it's as good as it's ever been. He's blowing plays up at the point of attack. He's, guarding Julius Randle for 48 minutes. He's not letting off on that end. And it's only going to get easier for him when Scotty Barnes is back and Pascal Siakam's back, because those three can just kind of interchangeably switch between who's got the biggest assignment. It's just been, and even Gary Trent Jr. can maybe sometimes take those wing assignments too with the way he's played. I mean, he's been fantastic defensively. It's just, he's a gnarly dude to play against. And it's on both ends, because he doesn't look fun to guard either. I mean, there were a few moments tonight. I talked about the passing, but just the shot creation we're seeing from OG is something we've not seen so far. We've seen the clips kind of shared around this week after that game against the Knicks of, the working with his dribbling coach and all that stuff, and working on the sort of the jab step and all that. I mean, the step back three is a legitimate weapon for him right now. There's a ton of separation he's creating on it. And then inside the arc, he's got a bit more of a bag, right? There was a possession where there was two possessions in a row in this game where it was one time down. He threw a beautiful high-low feed to Khem Birch, and Birch, didn't quite finish the bucket, ended up kicking it back out to OG. Low clock. He ends up sizing up, I think, Daniel Gafford, and then it has an 18-foot step back pull up. It was just oh my God, that's superstar stuff. And then the very next possession down, he finds his way into the paint, draws two defenders, and dumps it off, I believe, to Svi. Might have been Khem Birch at that time. But either way, a gorgeous pass there. Kind of doing all that stuff, just sort of taking in all the information that a star does, and then just using that information against the defense and sort of using it in the best sort of response for each sort of situation. You know, he had the beautiful baseline turnaround and pull and fade away in this one too. Like he's just, I'm blown away by the shot difficulty. The efficiency is not quite there. You know, just 21 points on 20 shots in this game. Didn't get to the line at all. I don't know if that's his fault necessarily. There were a few that probably could have gone his way, but I just am blown away by the sort of expansion of OG's game. A couple other ones to hit on here, Ashley, from this game. I want to talk about Svi Mykhailiuk because he has kind of gone under the radar, I think, in these last couple of games. He's just been rock solid. The three-point shooting, the space he's kind of breathed into the starting five has been really nice. What have been your impressions of Svi so far? And, you know, as the Raptors inch back closer towards full health here, do you think he's like solidified, guaranteed a spot in the rotation based on how he's played? Do you think he should be worried about Yuta Watanabe's potential return, considering the overlap of their skills? Or do you think Svi is just like ironclad? No, that guy is one of the 8 or 9 guys who will be in Nick Nurse's circle of trust when they are at full health.
Well, I don't trust Nick Nurse at all with anything. I trust Nick Nurse with I trust him to maybe hold my coffee when I run to the washroom, and I trust him that Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby and Pascal are going to play. But that's as far as it goes. His rotation has been a mixed bag, as you mentioned. Night to night, even game to game, has been wild. It's quarter to quarter. Sometimes you see matchups, I'm like, who is that? What is that? There was one point when Fred, I think it was in the second quarter, he was playing with just a mixed bag of people, and he was scoring a ton of points and just yeah, obviously, because he's probably what the hell am I supposed to do out here? Everyone's in these weird positions. We're gonna just try our best. But for him particularly, I was very happy with his defense, I would say, because regardless if he's going to be a top tier defender or not, that's fine. But he gets into people. He's not afraid of getting beat. He's at least stopping the point of attack when someone has the ball. He might not be guarding the point, but he's getting back in transition. He's not allowing fast break layups from his man. He's getting in front of them, and then he's at least making them have to think about it. Plus, he's been hitting a ton of shots, and he's just been solid in that way. In my recap earlier, I was like, is this what we had hoped Matt Thomas would be? A little bit.
Matt Thomas, if he took some magic beans and grew 6 inches.
Well, besides the fee-fi fo fum part about it and growing, yes. But that's the thing.
Don't you mean fee-fi fo fum? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I saw the blood of an Englishman. That's the actual fairy tale. Fairy tale, by the way, is pretty aggressive. But that's one thing about the NBA that I think that you might be noticing too. It's you can't necessarily just be a shooter anymore. You can't necessarily just be lights out from the corner, because teams are too smart. Coaches are making too many adjustments, and you're going to get demolished on defense. It's really hard to hide you. And so you have to at least be serviceable. And I think that Mykhailiuk has been that guy so far. So I think Watanabe is probably the favorite still. I would imagine that there is going to be a little bit of a battle. But here's the thing. This depth of this team,
it's crazy.
It's going to be something that is wildly special. And we talked about, you think the bench mob was good? Dude, these guys, when he figures out who his 7, 8, 9 guys are, once we get everyone back healthy, once Scotty's back, once Pascal's back, once the rotation gets sorted out, it's going to be a nightmare for opposing teams, I think.
Yeah, there are going to be some dudes who lose minutes, and I think sort of at risk. Chris Boucher, I think, was not very good again tonight. He had the one nice sort of circus shot and one that kind of bailed his night out. But I think, as much as there's been scoring towards Precious Achiuwa for how he's played, I think Boucher's been worse. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if both of them lose their spot, because there's Yuta Watanabe, who's 6'9", coming back, and Svi is 6'7". They can still kind of man that power forward position pretty capably, even if Precious and Boucher aren't in there. And I think they should very much be on notice. And I do also want to talk about a guy who, might fill in those minutes as well here in a sec as we get into the dude of the game, Ashley. The segment that everybody loves and definitely wants to stick around forever on the podcast. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the dude of the game, the guy who kind of went unnoticed, who we haven't talked about yet so far in the course of breaking down the game, who we still want to give some love and talk about a little bit. So we are going to give out the dude of the game, the second ever dude of the game on the other side. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at McDonald. McDonald's, baby. This episode is brought to you by McDonald's. It is proudly been serving communities since 1965. McDonald's always has been there to do more than just give you tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family can come to reconnect, a place where classmates can meet up for study groups knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi and an endless supply of French fries and McFlurries. And win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team, or the away team can come to recharge. It's the place you always look forward to stopping to on a long road trip to rest your legs and refuel. Talk about recovering, recharging. Look, let's be honest. Sometimes McDonald's is great when you've had a night with your pals and you want to go over. When I lived in school in Ottawa, there was a McDonald's right across the street from my best friend's house, and we frequented that a lot. A lot of McGriddles were consumed there on Sunday mornings, and that's all I'll say about that. But we would all go there, have our McGriddles, be sick together. It was a wonderful time, very community oriented, even if our tummies were not exactly happy with us in the moment. Either way, McDonald's help with it because they soak up the bad stuff. Either way, go to your McDonald's, your local McDonald's, to refuel and reconnect. Did somebody say Locked On Raptors watch party? Yeah, you can watch sports in McDonald's. They got TVs. They got a play place you can go to during intermission. It's all very, very good. And so thank you, of course, to McDonald's for sponsoring the podcast. I'm loving it. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. All right, let's continue on here and finish out the show. And next time we'll sing that. But instead of just doing spoken word, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ing. Other way.
Da-da-da-da-da. All I got.
Maybe they should have you do the reads, and I can just sit idly by.
I will say, let me actually give a shout out to McDonald's because I did get in trouble at a place I was working one time because I tweeted out that McDonald's hash browns are far superior to any other offering available. But the place that I was working apparently had a deal with a different corporation. And I got a little bit of trouble. But thanks, McDonald's.
You will not disparage the unnamed fast food restaurant hash browns. I don't even know who else has hash browns, but either way, let's
exactly
on here before we get in trouble. Let's move to the dude of the game, shall we? It is, of course, the brand new segment that everybody's talking about. It is the guy from a game that the Raptors played that was good and important to the effort, to the cause, but who maybe kind of goes under the radar, didn't really sort of factor in as like one of the key characters that we're talking about throughout the podcast. And so, Ashley Docking, I will put it to you as you have assigned this day's due to the game. Who is your due to the game and why?
The due to the game is Dalano Banton. And woo, 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 woo. Yes, I am unashamed to say that I will talk about him at every opportunity that I get. But the reason is that he's somebody who's always ready for whatever the task may be. He's a spark in many different ways. And because of his skill set, he can be utilized often. He can grab some rebounds. He can make a couple cute little passes, which we've seen before. He can shoot the ball as well. He's like thunder and lightning coming through the key when he picks up the ball and tries to get to the basket. And even tonight, he played 17 minutes. That's okay. That's modest, but it's not that bad coming off the bench. 2 for 2. He had 3 rebounds, 2 steals, and this one too, he had just 1 turnover, in 17 minutes. And that's the thing too. If you're going to be a role player who's used for spot minutes, whether or not you're just hot that night, whether someone's injured or you're having a good game, you need to make sure that you're not a net negative. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you're not a liability and people can trust you. Even if you're not doing a ton on the score sheet, you cannot be giving the ball away. And so for that reason, he's my due to the game.
I love it. I'm pro Dalano Banton. He gets his first due to the game nomination. And look, we can tell you talk about like Mr. Steal Your Girl. He's going to be Mr. Steal Your Minutes for somebody. And I don't know who yet, because again, I don't know what position he plays. Is he a power forward? Is he a point guard? Is he something in between? Still yet to figure it out. But we talked about Precious Achiuwa. We talked about Chris Boucher. And Malachi Flynn is also kind of floating out there in the ether. He played 3 minutes in this game. I can't wait for his
dad to step in. I'm honestly, I was so worried. I don't know if you follow football. Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad, he's having some problems on the Browns. He just tweeted a YouTube video and was like circling all the moments his son was open and the quarterback did not find him. And I'm
doing
just
the telestrator.
Yes. Oh my, he had graphics and everything. And I was just like, wait, I'm so worried about Flynn's dad. Cause you remember last year, he definitely has an opinion. And so I'm just like, don't do it. It's not going to work. Nick doesn't play that.
No. Yeah, Flynn got into this game, played 3 minutes tonight, and look, I thought he was fine in his 3 minutes. He had one possession where he pushed it, found Svi for a three, and it was really nice looking. I wish that we could see just longer stretches for Flynn because it doesn't really seem fair. It's almost like that Dwayne Casey, Norm Powell special way back in the day where Powell would play like 3 minutes at the end of the first half, and if he was good, he'd stick around. If he was bad, he was not to be seen until the next later part of a second
Like
quarter later
military
in the week.
tactics.
Yeah, and so Banton's going to take minutes from somebody here. I don't know. Look, is it possible Banton kind of tails off and maybe ends up with a 905 sometime this season? Maybe, but the way he's played, the way he just injects so much energy and speed to the team, I don't think he's going anywhere. I really don't. I think Nick Nurse loves him. And I guess if you're Nick Nurse and you're deciding between a 6'1" point guard who pushes the pace and a 6'9" point guard who pushes the pace and also plays really good defense and can kind of sub in as a power forward, you're probably going to go with the 6'9" guy if you're Nick Nurse. And so I'm not surprised that Banton's getting minutes over Flynn right now. I am curious to see, though, if as the season progresses, as they get healthy, maybe Boucher or Precious falls out of favor. Does maybe Banton become that sort of backup power forward to allow for Flynn in the game? Because I think Flynn's been doing some good things when he's played the last couple of games. And I'm envisioning some kind of second unit here where you're looking at Flynn with Banton constantly just running it down the other team's throat. Maybe that's where you get in, subbing like a Scotty Barnes or something as like as a reserve guy. I'm thinking about, we were talking, I think earlier today with James Herbert. We're recording this Wednesday night, by the way, but about how if you play that small ball lineup with Scotty at center, he can be your first sub out, bring it back in the second unit to start the second unit, start the second with the second unit. And you could have like a Banton, Flynn, Svi, Scotty Barnes insert starter here and just like be this high octane energy sort of freak show in the best kind of way. I wonder if maybe that's sort of an avenue they can go here, because I think Flynn's shown enough, even though he played just 3 minutes today. I think he's shown enough here to, sort of earn a bit more of a leash. But Banton, I don't think is going anywhere. And the nice thing about him is that he can kind of slot in wherever Nick Nurse wants him to accommodate whoever else is playing well, which is kind of
the only thing I would say about that worries me for Flynn is that Scotty's also kind of a point forward. And Nick Nurse likes to run sets too. Well, Pascal has the ball to start things off. So there's a lot of handsy moments going on. Gary Trent Jr. as well. Now we have Fred. Now we have Banton, right? So it's just a lot of people.
My arms are overflowing with effective ball handlers. What am I to do?
Like me when I go to McDonald's, I'm like, I'll have nuggets and a chicken sandwich. Yeah. So that's the only thing that worries me about him. But I do agree with you. I think that there needs to be at least an audition that is not so high pressure. And I understand wanting people to be hey, you got to get ready, be ready, stay ready, sure. But like, what about a little bit of grace? Like the grace that we're showing Precious Achiuwa at this point in time, because he feels like a guy for me that has a ton of potential, but you can only bank on potential for so long. And it is early, of course. I'm not trying to railroad the guy, but he feels like, to me, somebody who doesn't exactly know what to do with his body. We see a dunk like we did earlier in the game today, and you're just like, oh my God, he should be devastating defenses. He should be demolishing the rim. And every time he gets in close, he's kind of like, so a layup? It's like, no. Do you know how big you are? You need to impose yourself. And so he needs to get his handle on that before he's going to be getting like a ton of, I think, important minutes.
Yeah, the Precious thing is super interesting. I expected fully for Kem Birch to start this game. He closed it, of course, again, started the second half again. Nick Nurse talked before the game about how like a couple bad games is not going to sort of lose Precious his job. It's now been 3 or 4 bad games in a row for him. He did have a very good start to the season. And I think that's kind of being lost in the sort of Precious criticism, is that he started the season excellently. That lineup with him in the starting 5 was excellent and was like blowing teams off the floor. And so I get why Nick Nurse kind of wants to see if he can recapture that magic. But at some point here, it's just pretty obvious that Kem Birch is the better option. And, honestly, if he's closing games, I'm happy. Honestly, I'm fine. The starter, whatever. It's not something I'm going to lose my mind over. It's a thing that is annoying, sure, and it makes it easier to get your better players in more if they start the game. But I think it's, as long as Birch is closing these games, I think Nurse is handling it correctly considering he's starting Precious, I think he's doing the right thing and adapting as the game goes along. But that's certainly going to be a thing that I don't think we're going to stop talking about that all season. Apparently, that's just the thing we talk about every day. Is Precious a starter? What's he going to do? I don't know who's to say. But if he throws down more dunks like that on poor Corey Kispert, I feel like he might continue to be in Nick Nurse's good graces, just because sometimes you want to be entertained as a coach with cool dunks, and maybe that's what gets him into the lineup.
That's actually what was on the whiteboard today.
Yeah. But Ashley, that feels like a good place to leave off today's show. This was absolutely a delight. Love chatting with you whenever you come on the podcast. Where can people check out all of the incredible work you got going on?
Follow me on Twitter. I see my handles on the screen, but for those listening audio only, it's at SmartAsh, SMRTASH. You can find me on Instagram, my full name, Ashley Docking. And you can also find me on Twitch. I'm doing a cool stream with NBA Twitch, the NBA's official Twitch account, on November 16th. So we'll be doing a little 1-hour show at 6:30 on the 16th.
That is very exciting. Again, follows at SmartAsh, SMRT, like Homer Simpson says. At SmartAsh, very much appreciate having on, Ashley. We'll have you again very soon, I hope, and keep up the wonderful work with the only TikToks I consume. I'm not a TikTok person, but I will find a way to watch your TikToks because they're lovely. They're just fantastic content. So keep up the wonderful work. You can find me, of course, on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can subscribe to, rate, review, all that good stuff. It's very much appreciated. I'll be at the game on Friday against the Cavs. We'll have a recap for that over at RaptorsHQ.com. You can also listen to Basketball, my podcast with Katie Heindel, where we talk sort of about basketball. It's a very, very good time. There's a Patreon for that show as well, if you want to go and support that. And that will do it. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Go make your second listen, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, as Josh Lloyd is crushing it over on the YouTube channel there and on the regular podcast feed, telling you all you got to know about your fantasy basketball teams and the early part of the season. And we will talk to you again on Friday as Katie Heindel, the aforementioned, is going to join the show for a mailbag episode. So get your questions in, shoot them to me on Twitter, or you can, I'll probably put a little video later on, video prompt on the YouTube later to get some questions and comments. But until then, thank you so much. We'll talk to you then on Friday with a mailbag episode. And bye-bye.